Well, do you need to change the battery?
Eventually. I got too much.
That's what he does. And he's like, hold on. I'll be like talking about something deep. And he's like, hold on, bro. Hold on. Stop. Hold on. I'm like, what the fuck? Criminally bullshit, dude. Carrie update. Carrie the Bronco, Jeff's Bronco. You know why this is such a good update? Because we're at a milestone here. Jeff, you know what I'm saying. Quick one to Jeff. Jeff, thank you. Thank you for pressing on me. Thank you for giving me a second chance at getting, you know, forward progress on this. Thank you for still letting me work on this car. I made some mistakes with Jeff. You know, lessons, mistakes, however you want to put it. And you know, I was transparent about it after, a little bit after, and Jeff gave me the opportunity to make things right with him. And what I mean by that is, you know, get to a point where this car, where it felt like I made it right with him, you know, getting some parts purchased, getting some work done, and then I think we both agree that, you know, doing extra, getting ahead of this thing by trading my time for work. And that's where we're at, and I'm really stoked on it. So kind of the goal here was getting a pillar rearward done, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I think we did, I'm not gonna lean on this thing. I think what we did is we had the upper control panel done, and I remember because we were going hard on the button program. So let's start there. We needed to get, yeah, there's a lot to go through. So right off the bat, that's a 6-way forward seat slider. Well, that is mated to PRP. Shell seat brackets. So that thing does, you know, typical OEM car slider stuff, tilts, angles, forwards, you know, front down, rear down, all together ups, all the stuff. We wanted to get through this and close out a lot. Like there was miscellaneous stuff, right? Everything was kind of Clecoed together. The resto mod systems are in here now. I think the only thing you guys are going to be able to see is going to be, yeah, you'll see part of it hanging off over here. If you go under there, see it? And then you'll see the bulkhead under there. You'll see the 2 modules for the resto mod. So essentially what's going on is there's a resto mod, there's 2 haymakers, which are their biggest, baddest machines. There's a haymaker going, you know, left to right up against the firewall. And then in the center console, there's another haymaker perpendicular going front to rear. There's like block offs and there's stuff, so it's pretty much 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vents, but they're like double pressurized, so when you turn this thing on, it's gonna seriously blow. Okay, a lot going on in here. Day car jack system. You can see the primary tubes up here. These are 33-inch stroke jacks, so the actual pump is hiding behind the 3rd seat. There's like a ton of space for that thing, so the fittings, the actual hydraulic fittings and stuff, there's inches and inches on each side of that pump. Originally we had it on the passenger side of the third seat, and Jeff asked if we could fit it behind it, and it was, again, like I've talked about, always be open, because, you know, even if you're the builder guy, doesn't mean that your clients don't think about this stuff and they have some good input. Same deal. So we centralized it behind the seat. It's actually not the best looking thing, so the ugly ticket kind of gets appeased. I see what's going on. No. You got to do what's real, right? So it's getting in here like this. So once you're in here, oh, it's really good in here. So you can see these partitions. All these, so there's optic armor in here. This is all 1/4 inch, and there's a nice trim bezel, which that was DJ's idea. What that's gonna do for us for upholstery, I'd like to almost have it, I guess these have to be separately upholstered, and then you'd still have foam go behind here, and you'd have like Alcantara, you know, and then this would be an opportunity to powder coat these with like an accent color. You know, tint the windows maybe, but I think if you leave the middles clear, just do the side glass. The other stuff is the trim in here is all done. Trim up here is all done. So this thing gives a crazy dimensional feel to the cage, because like where the solo cage is, they go under the factory sheet metal and they go quite a bit under it. Usually for us, we like to run the cages, cut out the factory sheet metal, run them as tight as you can, up, you know, touching contact up here. So we really just tried to make the best of it, because it's got these weird like bends that happen here. And so I tried to bury all that where you don't even notice that there's like these things going on. The Holley display is here. Everything is welded. I think what we're talking about next is getting batteries in here. You know, I feel like he said there would be 4 batteries, but I think we're good on 2. I'm gonna get out of here. This feels different. This feels really luxurious. Yeah. Yeah, GPS. Comms. Yeah. Oh yeah, support too. That was a little finicky. You guys remember that when we want a secondary latch? Because this thing couldn't hold. So we have some brackets in here. Now it's like, it ain't leaving. We wanted to get all this done. We wanted to get everything finalized. The 2 AC systems. Hold on. I want to get a little note on there to trim that to get it consistent, especially if upholstery. A lot of this stuff, I have to like figure out what we're gonna do, and I tried to gap it accordingly. But we got to figure out how much foam is going to go on the top, how much Dynamat goes up there, like, and then, you know, how much more trimming we need to do to make sure everything's cohesive. Like, you want to build this stuff tight with no gaps, but then at the end of the day, you got to figure out how much upholstery goes in them, because then you have to actually retrim everything to make sure all the gaps are consistent and they're opened up for upholstery and for foam. 2 AC controls. So what's going to go on here is you'll have like 1 and 2. You'll have your master, and then you'll have your adjustments for each unit. Jeff had this. Again, it's preference. You know, these are huge investments. So like, client has an expectation here. If it's not some absurd thing like a fish tank or something in the middle here, then you got to go with what the expectation is. And for Jeff, he wants to be able to pilot this thing, you know, solo as well. So my first idea was, okay, we have driver, co-driver, climate control. Meaning like one guy is in control of one system from over there, but you technically could not be able to reach that. So now Jeff has control of everything right here. He has everything is within his reach of what he needs right here. You know, 12 volts, battery cutoff, switches down here. You know, all his door controls will be in here. So now it's solid. The other thing we're looking at too is going to be looking at a handbrake. He mentioned a handbrake. I think the best move here, there's room where if we redo the dead pedal down there or we trim it, I've always wanted to build a separate brake pedal just for the rear brake actuation, whether you have a separate caliper or it's all tied in, but something where you can you have it down here, because at least for me, when I've been driving cars and they have a handbrake, let's just say driving in general, every moment that my two hands is, you know, I'm only driving with one hand, is a moment where I could possibly have a mistake and I need both hands, and like I want both hands on the wheel at all times. And the amount of time that I want to have just one hand on the wheel is minimal, period. So that's why I like to, you know, I build these where the shifters are close. You know, it's close. Like you're spending a little bit of time. You know, you're not like bam, brown, kabong, you know, same deal. So handbrake, especially with a handbrake, you're like, ooh, you're upsetting the car, and then you're one wheeling in an off-road condition where it's not a street car. So you're bouncing, loading, unloading most of the time, where it's not just this controlled drift. And you have one hand on the wheel while your car is not, while you've broken control of your car. I don't like that. And so like the idea is, if you have gas pedal, say you're 2 foot driving, gas pedal, brake pedal left. And this is set up for both. Like you could be pressing here and you could be doing this, but a lot of times you end up doing this, pedaling. So same deal, if you have this grip where you're only using maybe 2 of these, you can put a pedal up here, and that pedal is just going to engage your rear brakes. So if you want, then you go, you know what, I'm going to initiate just the rear brakes, and I want to brake this thing into a, you know, I want to set this thing up for a turn. Boom, you know, you need extra help. Say you're turning and you need more, and you know, something to get better control or to set up, you just hit the left pedal and it turns into your brake. And you can do it in a way where it's not close enough to your brake pedal to be a thing, where you have to go the extra measure to do it, and it's in a little bit of an awkward spot, but that means that you're never gonna hit it, and you have to search for it to do it. And it's the same thing as going over here and grabbing a fucking lever. But the good part is, when you're in that shit, you're already prepared to counter it however you need to with both hands on the wheel, and you're technically more in control. So what we're gonna look at is see if we can get a third brake in there. I see right now that it's possible. We just need to tone this thing down. This is built for a Sasquatch right here. So I think we can get rid of a couple of those and not have the Yeti dead pedal. And we'll just get something where the foot can, you know, all you're doing for the dead pedal always is if you're in like big chopper, you're like, oh shit, you just want to be able to hold where you're not submarining. The other thing is it holds you so you can operate your right foot with controls, and it's not dependent on like your legs flopping around. So I hope that makes sense. GPS is missing out of here, but once we get, you know, all the other parts, I'll plug that thing in. Let's go talk about the rear. Couple things to look at on this. This is awesome. You know who's got better fitment than this is Darren Parsons. His new truck, or the new to him truck, dude, it is, I cannot fit a piece of paper in between his tire and his bedside, and it doesn't rip or do anything. It's kind of awesome. And it, like, I think Darren's truck sits with part of the sidewall buried in the bedside, like that ride height. It's that low. But anyways, this is the fitment. This is what we were going for. Mario, you nailed it on these things. We have them all notched, but it adds this profile. That's what we wanted. I think we remember talking about it. It's like this. That's your profile. That's a very prominent shape. And that also is a reflection. Like, you have to think about these things from farther away. What grabs where they show light and they reflect light, and what's cohesive where this matches the rear, and the rear needed to have that. If we just conformed and we played by the rules and we just made it at the belt line of the window, then we're gonna take an L by matching the design language to the rear. So raising this and raising this body line up higher, it conforms with the front. Same with this. This is an exact shape of that. Let me show you this angle. All right, Joey, let me show you something over here. If you can film from here, what you can do is you can sight this, like you can come out, and if you guys look at this, look at, and then sight the rear. And you can see that all of the design language is pulling from here to the rear. Is it doing it? Cool. So we have a Fab Diaries on this. This is the stainless woven mesh. This is the insert into the shock opening. It's a little more involved than you think because it's rolled and it's broke right here, so there's a return. So there's actually like metal shaping going into the stainless woven mesh right here. So watch the Fab Diaries if you want to see how to do stuff like that. I learned a lot myself doing that one. We can talk about what we have here. These things are awesome. So this is a Geyser Brothers fill cap, plus an integrated dry brake if you ever want to be spicy and do a dry brake setup on this thing. But really it's just a treatment. There's so many like just hokey dick fuel fillers and, you know, like things for fuel tanks. It's either that or use like a street bike one that's got like all the bolts and, you know, the key and all that shit. But this seems like the most stylized, prominent, functional thing you can do. The other thing is it's drilled so we can put a lanyard on here. So if he wants to, he can just have this and he'll never forget it. You know, even if he takes it off and he kind of sets it here, still okay. I mean, if you're a gangster, you could almost have like a little hook built in where it sets. But what we wanted to do here, this is all optic armor. This is 1/4 inch, fresh seals. And then this plate, there's 2 features here. So one is this guy. This is a detailed piece. This is all done on Fab Diaries. You guys can watch the entire construction process on this thing. These pieces are custom made, and what they are is this is a drip rail to get it out of there so it drips and only goes one spot. It doesn't make all this crazy shit when you overflow. The other is this vent. This is an extraction vent in here. So that leads to here. Ready for the next one? Got a free wrench? 9/16. All right, so again, you know, through the build process, I know we covered building this fuel cell can out. I know we talked about the cradle. I know we remembered the structure was early on. Everything is completed. Everything is welded. Everything is final passed. The bladder is done. Harmon did the bladder. Dual pickups, sending unit, you know, or dual fills, you know, all the pickup, return, breather. So the fuel fill is the primary tube you see here. That's going from the, you know, the dry brake or the fuel fill area. So you have the fill tube, and then this guy here, what this is this is a vapor extraction system. So, you know, it doesn't get super musky with fuel smell in there, but it's enough to be like it smells like gas. It's impossible to outrun that if you're building an SUV with a fuel cell in the back. especially if it's not some, you know, if you did it where you have like a low, small capacity fuel cell, you could sheet metal it in, and you know, it'll be the outside elements that take it. But when you're building something like this is 75 gallons. So just think about like a drum is 55 gallons, so it's 75. And this is where it makes sense to live. So we have a partition, which is a safety wall, like a firewall partition, but it's not fully sealed. So what we're doing is we're using a Parker pumper here, which is a PCI air pumper. So it's actually not a Parker pumper, just call it an air pumper. Usually for your helmet, built for severe elements, you know, race cars, no windshield, water, mud, all this stuff. That thing takes all the smell out of here, and it pulls it in, and it blows it out these tubes. So what it's doing is it's just doing an active extraction of the smell. It's not so much like, I know some people mention about like, oh, is it gonna make a spark? You know, is it gonna pull through the fan and make sparks? And I mean, that's, I guess we'll look into that, but that seems like really heavy gas stuff. If it was like pulling directly from the cell or the breather, maybe, but this is really just to help the aroma and to have that luxury thing. With Jeff, the intent for the interior is to be like a windows up truck. It's tinted, it's plush, the upholstery is insane. You know, it feels like just super high end, and there's AC blowing all the time, there's no dust, and that smell, we don't want to be partnering up with the fuel cell to make that thing smell like fucking fuel and upholstery. It's a luxury thing. So that's why we did it, but you can see, you know, the cradle, you can see how the cell slides in and out. You can see that it's all tailored to the chassis. I love building these fuel cells into the chassis like this, because this is what you get. You get like this insanely packaged thing. That's our update on A-pillar rearward. Now, next step, we got a pallet of parts over there from Burke at Alpha Laser, designed by Jason Hurt. We are going to dissect the front. The intent here is to keep this thing clean and simple. We don't want to go overboard. We do not need to make an entire firewall here. The engine fits, the trans is right there ready for stuff. The area of concern is the cross member. This is a beam cross member / engine lower cross member / frame support. We wanted to revise this in a way where it incorporates the steering. We also wanted to, and it was my idea, but I wanted to put a rack in here instead of a steering box with a ram assist. Less components, but also just something different. You know, people have preferences on driving with a steering box or driving with a rack, but I think it's something different, and we should give it a whirl. So what we have is a cross member. We're going to demo this out. We're going to build out the cross member on the table, and then we're going to fit it in the car. The cross member also lets the beam cycle. So we're going to notch the frame. We don't have to have a steering box right here. If you guys see this area, all this is going to get notched up. So we're going to get a lot more up travel out of the 4-wheel drive beams. These are Solo Motorsports beams with a 9-inch, they're badass. We're going to dress these up a little bit, but this is going to let the up travel cycle properly, and it's going to match the back. A lot of times with a TTB setup or a twin traction beam, your culprit for up travel is always this. It's the top of the pumpkin to the frame. So, you know, you're almost sitting in the bump zone with these things, or you want them to sit high as shit, and then your stability and stuff goes out the window because you're in this short bus thing, you know, that's sitting high. So like optimal is your up travel from ride height, and that's with every truck, you know, up travel from ride height, a nice low ride height with lots of up travel. So put this cross member in here. We're gonna notch the frame out and box it and get this thing cycling premium up travel. This cross member incorporates the beam pivots for the driver's side and the passenger side, plus it incorporates a swinger pickup. So we have swingers still, but on the, you know, the rack also mounts into this thing. has a rack adapter, and that's what's pulling on the swingers. And the swingers are stainless steel, all machined, you know, one big beautiful piece. And the rack adapter is all chromoly. I think it's chromoly, might be stainless steel. But anyways, all this stuff is gonna go together in here. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pickup points for the engine cage that come out of the firewall. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut those guys off. I'm gonna sleeve them right there, and we're gonna build, you know, new engine cage work, just something that's, you know, that matches what we do. That'll be the next phase here. So I'm not gonna go into like the phases after that, but the next one to count on is, you know, assembly. That was a weird way to say that. Assembly of the lower cross member, 3D printed swingers, so we can make sure and verify like fit, get all the steering dialed in. I'm gonna retain the shock mounts on the beams so we don't have to dive into more work there. Just gonna make everything better up top. More structure. I see the dry sump tank there, so that's something I'm gonna try to package in. I think we can get a win there. There's not a lot up here, and there's plenty of room for coolers, but that's also something all I'm gonna do is think about. I'm not gonna build that stuff yet. We're just gonna build the main cage stuff that doesn't ever have to change, and nothing, you know, everything just bolts to it. We don't have to build out the, you know, the outriggers and the other assemblies. So that should close out what's in here. You know, it'll be nice to see all that. I think we're gonna use a PSS rack. It's either that or a HOW. I know originally we talked about running a big PSS billet rack. The only thing I see with those, you know, is they're beautiful. They're really pretty. The Truggy had one, we had no issues. So I think we'll lean there. Something else to note is gonna be the bump stops. So there's a lot of work on this frame where it looks like it's been plated and cleaned up. And what we did when Jason Hurd engineered all of this cross member, he already scanned all this. So we're literally just cutting stuff off. We're building the thing out. It's probably gonna, he likes to leave them a little longer so he can really fit them into the car properly. We'll full pan weld everything, do the bump stops, do the engine cage, do the shock mounts, do the steering. You know, start, as soon as we verify all the steering works, we'll get everything machined, but we can at least build the stuff out with the 3D printed parts. And we'll close out the front phase at that. All right, you guys. Like I said, this one's been, it's just been a journey, partially due to me. And, you know, just lessons with the business, gratitude for having the opportunity to make things right, you know, and more or less doing it for the car. I think Jeff and I share the same expectation for the vision. And it's tough to not finish them all the way through because they just will not be what they're supposed to be. And I think, you know, same thing, Jeff and I both, we see the vision for this thing and it's something awesome. And I think we're truly gonna have a really special Bronco on our hands. So seeing this through, we just wanted to close this out and be done, be at that milestone. You know, we talked about this stuff forever. We talked about the proportions forever. We've talked about the extended wheelbase and the stock length, and, you know, all this stuff has been talked. So now the execution is done and we're off to the front. So next update, we're gonna have, you know, the front going, probably lop some stuff off, have that assembly. Either we have that assembly welded on the table and we have a bunch of demo work here, you know, if you guys get to us at that point, or we already have that assembly in the car. Hey, oh, come on, do it. Oh my goodness, who is this? It's Amelia. Hi, good girl. So either we have it on the table or we have it in the car and we have tubes and stuff strung, and we'll go from there. So Carrie's back, we're on. Thank you guys.